Better idea.
Okay. What do you think your gift is? Your gift?
My gift is...
or why you are the way you are?
Well, I am the child of a mathematician and a therapist.
Yes, I know.
So we have,
that's interesting from the beginning.
We have the continuum here, and I have parents on both ends.
Right.
I have a father who engages in highly specialized, impossible to understand complex mathematics, and I have a mother who is engaged in the job of communicating with people on the most elemental and fundamental
basic emotional level.
Yeah. So, you know, if those are the two kind of poles in your upbringing, maybe you're constantly shuttling back and forth between these two extremes, which is what my writing is.
So therefore,
right? My writing is shuttling back and forth between the obscure but deeply fascinating regions of academia and this question of how do I communicate to a mass audience, right? So that's a very reductive way, I suppose.
It is reductive, and people would say this idea. I mean, one gets you to the curiosity, the other gets you to the ability to translate it and transform it.
And my mother she's also a writer, is a beautiful translator. My mother has always been my writing role model. An extraordinary.
She can use example, anecdote, story. She
taught me from I remember as a child her telling me this, that all good writing must have one quality, and that is clarity. Everything else is superfluous.
I couldn't agree more with her too. Yeah. And there's so much of it doesn't.
Yeah.
I mean, I get so angry when I see something that's written and it doesn't have form, shape, structure, or a driving narrative, or a range of things, that make it accessible. Now, some people argue that making it accessible is not the role of the writer. The role of the writer is simply to lay it out there.
Yeah. I think the role of the writer is to make it accessible.
Yeah. I don't know whether this is a book. I'm fascinated by two things. One is, I said, where does this, as they said about Lincoln, the desire to be president was in fire that burned deep inside of him, like a furnace inside of him, and I think that is something, and I think Barack Obama has that.
Yes.
There is clearly a sense of there's something similar to practiced, determined practice.
Yeah.
And it is something like a sense of seeing the goal and wanting to get to that goal, and everything that in your environment somehow is part of the architecture of that and part of the path. And you're able to accept, discard, use, and it's not exploitative. It's just part of, and it's a cumulative kind of thing.
Yeah.
So you know what you want to learn. You know the kinds of things that you have to do. You know the buttons you have to do.
Yeah,
am I stupid, or is this?
No. I mean, there is this sense, even when, I spent a lot of time with this guy, Bill Joy, who's
a great friend of mine. He's been on the show 1,000 times.
Yeah, and we just talked about his time in undergrad at Michigan and all the time he spent in this little underground room, this computer center. And what was so interesting about that, and he goes on, of course, to write the rules of the internet.
Yeah, right, and help found Sun Microsystems and other things.
But so he arrives at Michigan. He's 17. He's from up the street. He's some gawky kid, He's one of those sort of nerdy kids. And what's really interesting is he discovers the computer room, and it's as if everything else falls away, and he has what you're just talking about, which is he couldn't articulate where he wanted to go at that time, but on some unconscious level, he realizes, I have found the thing that has captured my imagination, and I have faith that it will take me somewhere meaningful, right? That's enough. And that, it's funny because I also, in the chapter on the Jewish lawyers, I talk a lot to these guys about their parents, who are these off the boat, don't speak any English, have no money, working 18-hour days in the garment industry. And they have that same sense for their children. I am here in this country, I don't speak the language, I don't know the first thing about it, I don't have any money, but I know that my child is going to end up somewhere meaningful. Right? And that knowledge of that belief on the part of their parents propels these kids to, from PS 21 to Stuyvesant to City College to New York University and finally to the top of the heap. There's some there's some, it's that there's some kind of a wonderful magical element in all of this that I don't know whether we can ever kind of bottle or capture or even adequately describe, but it's there.
And then generations are different from generations. I mean, you know, some generations, somebody will be driven, and the next generation, you know, have some of the qualities they inherit, but they want to live a different lifestyle. Maybe it's simply because they saw the nature of their parents and said, I choose to do something else, almost in rebellion rather than in dislike.
There's a lovely book written. So Hunter College, one of the first gifted programs in the country was at Hunter College, and it was a gifted elementary school. And there's this lovely book written about the graduates of the Hunter College Elementary School, what they went on to do. And these are kids with basically genius level IQs, right? And the point of the book, I wish I could remember the name of the authors, was that when you look at what they end up doing, these genius kids, it's not that impressive. In fact, it's downright unimpressive.
Exactly.
And their conclusion was, but they said simultaneously, though, if you look at the lives these kids go on to have, they have really happy lives, and they have good careers, but nothing spectacular, and they seem to be very, very contented. And that one of the conclusions is that perhaps this is because these kids were so smart that they very early on understood what kind of sacrifices it would have to take to be good, and decided they wanted to have none of it.
Because the woods are full of people who said, I love where I am, but if I'd known what it took to get here, I might not have taken that journey.
But this is this wonderful thing, and I talk about in the book, which is the kind of paradox of genius, because I talk about how completely unimportant a really high IQ is to great success. We just have one bit of evidence.
I don't understand that. Where is a high IQ important?
Where is it important?
Yeah. I mean, because we place a lot of premium on that, do we not?
A huge amount.
I mean, that's how we promote, and I mean, i.e., in terms of you get to go from one university to the next university, you get chance to play in the arena.
Exactly. We are obsessed with it. We pretend we're not, but we're obsessed with it. Nowhere is as important. I mean, what is important is that you be smart enough. So if you talk to psychometricians, they will tell you that IQ matters up to about 120.
Right.
And anything above that is meaningless.
Right.
You are
There's in 125 and 145 is
meaning. You are as likely to win a Nobel with an IQ of 120 as you are with an IQ of 200.
How do you know all this stuff? Is this all because you can find the people whose life is devoted to figuring out these kinds of things, and then you can put it together?
Yeah.
All right. Nathan Myhrvold, another guest on the show, in addition to Bill Joy.
Yeah.
You two have coffee, lunch, something every month, right? And he and I talk about doing a show, which he'll make a regular contribution. Before I even knew about your relationship with him, what's that about, other than stealing good ideas?
What's me hanging out with Nathan?
Yeah, right.
No, it's Nathan is this guy who is. You ask him almost any question, and it is impossible that his answer will not be useful to you in some way. He's one of these rare characters who has a combination of this kind of insatiable curiosity and high intellect with his understanding of kind of the social processes of knowledge is what really sets him apart. In fact, I always tell Nathan that he'd be just as successful if he had half as many IQ points. I don't think it's his IQ points, it's his ability to construct this kind of network of really fascinating people and get them to share things with him.
And his curiosity.
Yeah, and his curiosity. Which is...
See, I don't understand the difference. That's another thing I don't understand. Why are some people insanely curious and will point to it as part of the reason for their success in the best sense of that word, not the worst sense of the word?
Yeah.
You know, what decides who gets curiosity and who doesn't?
Well, I suppose I have this idea that I play with in the book, which is this idea of meaningful work, how meaningful work is one of the most important things we can impart to children. And the example of meaningful work is the thing that people need to get to. And meaningful work is work that is autonomous, that is to say no one's looking over your shoulder, work that is complex, that occupies your mind, and work where there is a relationship between effort and reward, where for everything you put in, you get something out. And the great advantage, for example, of the garment industry for Jewish immigrants was that even though it was this horrible, terrible thing, it was actually meaningful work because it was explicitly entrepreneurial. It was this, if you could pull together a bunch of sewing machines and you were willing to stay up all night, you could start your own company, right?
Right.
The same was not true of Mexican immigrants in California. working in the fields of the Central Valley is not meaningful in any of those respects, right? And to me, you know, a while I was wondering about the thought experiment. If the Mexicans had come to New York in 1900 and the Jewish immigrants from New York had gone to the Central Valley, would we talk today about how the Mexicans are this extraordinary success story in America? And would we worry about the consequences of all of these struggling Jewish immigrants in California? I mean, it's that much of an issue, you know, this, and I think one of the places curiosity comes from is if you are convinced that the thing you are doing is meaningful, then curiosity is there's no cost to it, right? If you think that there's always going to be a connection between what you get in, what you put in and what you get out, then of course you'll run off with a great excitement after an idea that catches your eye.
People often ask me to define leadership, and I say to them what you just said all the time. You have to communicate, one, what the mission is, and how meaningful someone's contribution is to the mission, and what the level of accountability is, and all those kind of things. But making their contribution meaningful and part of something.
Yeah.
Now, some people look at what you write of these 3 books and say there's some social purpose there, something. Is there?
Yeah, not explicitly, but I'm interested in starting conversations about, you know, I always say people are experience rich and theory poor, that most people do not have the time or the means to organize their experiences. And I do, right? That's my job. I have this fabulous luxury to go out and sort of find ways of putting things that may seem disconnected together, and putting the puzzle together. And that's a social purpose, is you know, making connections for people, which allows them, I think, to have a kind of conversation they couldn't have before.
Is there any backlash to your enormous success? Do you see
sure
it
there
in
is.
terms of what commentary about it?
I mean, I
a
get
little
my
envy, jealous, whatever.
I get my share of I take my share of shots, but that's all part of the
being a public person.
Being a public person. I don't have a sense of I'm not really you know, you just have to not read your reviews, I think.
Well, that's exactly right. And or make the work itself is what makes it exciting. Your works. I once went into that restaurant downtown, and where you were writing, and I thought, I think I've seen you in 2 restaurants writing.
I write in public. Yes.
Yeah, and Pastis is one of them.
That's right? I remember that.
Yeah, I remember seeing you there, and you said, "What the hell are you doing here?" And you said, "Working." I'm here to eat. You're here to work. What is that about? I mean, there are legend stories about writers who can only work in bars and.
Yeah, well, I'm a product of the Washington Post. That's where I learned to write, and I worked in the newsroom, which is, you know, this loud, noisy, you know, place. And then I got to the New Yorker, and I had a little office with the door that closed, and it was absolutely so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. And I almost lost my mind. So I've had to recreate the newsroom, and the only way I can do that is to go to some loud, crazy cafe.
The book is called Outliers, The Story of Success, Malcolm Gladwell. It's fascinating. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie.
Great to have you here.